About energy gap.
About energy gap and introducing about insulators, conductors and semiconductors. Okay, so which is a and it is a valence band or conduction band. Or suppose it is a conduction band and it is a valence band. So in conduction band, in valence band, so we need to know about valence band and conduction band. So in valence band, the electrons in orbit. Okay, so the electrons in outermost orbit is called valence electrons. So valence electrons, so those are in outermost of an orbit. So already we know that orbits and outer shells in chemistry. తెలుసా గుర్తున్నాయా?
Hey, బంద్ కరో.
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. The electrons in an outermost orbit of an atom is called as a valence electrons. So atoms, electrons, and ఇంకా ఏమేమి ఉంటాయి ఆర్బిట్ లో? న్యూట్రాన్స్, ప్రోటాన్స్, ఎలక్ట్రాన్స్, ఇంకా
Electron.
అంతేనా? Okay, so the electrons are outermost of an orbit of an atom is called as a valence electrons. Okay, so these valence electrons in valence band. So it is these valence electrons having a least binding energy. Okay, so least binding energy with the orbit. Okay, so energy band is occupied by the valence electron is called as a valence band. So it is a highest occupied band and it is having a free electrons. Okay, it is having free electrons. So valence band is nothing but outermost orbit of an atom is called as a valence electrons. Okay, so it is having a least binding energy through the orbital energy and it is having a free electrons. So without giving any external source such as DC voltages or AC voltages. So without giving any external source, so these free electrons excited from one to another. Free electrons excited from one to another. So these, for suppose the valence band is having electrons. Ikkada electrons unnai. So if the electrons, so these are the free electrons. These three free electrons attracted towards the conduction band. Okay, so attracted towards the conduction band. So when the attraction of these two bands, so we'll get the electricity in between conduction band and valence band. అర్థమైంది కదా? సో valence band ఏంటి? ఒక ఫ్రీ ఎలక్ట్రాన్స్ అని ఉంటున్నాయి. సో ఫ్రీ ఎలక్ట్రాన్స్ ఏం చేస్తున్నాయి? ఉండే దగ్గర ఉండకుండా సో ఆటోమేటిక్గా ర్యాండమ్ ఫ్రీ మోషన్ ఆఫ్ ఎలక్ట్రాన్స్. సో ఫ్రీ మోషన్ ఆఫ్ ఎలక్ట్రాన్స్ లో ఏమవుతుంది? సో ఇట్ ఈస్ ఎగ్జైటెడ్ టు సిబి. So these excited electrons will create some electricity in between or conductivity in between BB and CB, conduction band and valence band.
Sound कम कर रहे भाई.
Is that okay? Are we clear? Doubt అర్థమైందా? నిన్ను అడిగారు కదా, టైం లేక చెప్పాలని. వినిపిస్తుంది కదా మీకు? రైట్. సో నెక్స్ట్ కండక్షన్ బ్యాండ్. కండక్షన్ బ్యాండ్ వర్క్ ఏంది ఇక్కడ? జస్ట్ అట్రాక్టింగ్ ద valence electrons. Just attracting valence electrons and so there is a conduction between BB and C. ఇక్కడ కండక్షన్ బ్యాండ్లు చేసేది ఏం లేదు, జస్ట్ అక్కడ నుంచి వ్యాలెన్స్ ఎలక్ట్రాన్స్ ని రిసీవ్ చేసుకుంటుంది. రిసీవ్ చేసుకున్న తర్వాత వీటికి ఒక షెల్టర్ అనేది ఇస్తుంది. ఇక్కడ నుంచి వచ్చిన ఎలక్ట్రాన్స్ కి షెల్టర్ ఇస్తుంది. సో దాన్ని ఇది కండక్షన్ బ్యాండ్ లెక్క ఫామ్ అవుతుంది. ఇట్ ఈస్ ఏ వ్యాలెన్స్ బ్యాండ్. సో వ్యాలెన్స్ బ్యాండ్, హౌ ద వ్యాలెన్స్ బ్యాండ్ ఈస్ క్రియేటెడ్? బికాస్ ఆఫ్ outermost electrons in a orbit. outermost electrons in orbit. So that will create some valence band. అర్థమైందా?
సార్
కొంచెం రెస్పాండ్ అవ్వండి.
Yes, sir, understood.
ఓకే సార్.
Right. So before going these semiconductors, we have the properties of semiconductors. Properties of semiconductor. So this is also known as electrical properties of semiconductor. Electrical properties of semiconductor. So these properties are resistivity, conductivity, and temperature coefficients. Temperature coefficient. So these three electrical properties we have in a semiconductors. So first one, resistivity, conductivity, and temperature. So resistivity. Resistance is nothing but flow of electrons. And conductivity. Conductivity means
ఎలక్ట్రిసిటీ
Opposition of resistance.
opposition of resistance. Okay, so what are the units for resistivity?
ఓమ్స్.
Ohms.
What about
Omega.
conductivity? చెప్పారు కదా. So it is opposition of
MHO.
resistivity.
MHO.
So it is mhos.
Most. Yes.
mho. OHM. Ohm.
Ohms.
So units for resistivity is ohms and units for conductivity is mhos. Okay, so it is having a particular values, particular resistance values. So it is 1 to 100 mega ohms. 1 to 100 mega ohms. And it is 10 to 10 power minus 6 mhos. 10 to 10 power minus 6 mhos. 10 power minus 6 mhos ante, so it is a least resistance value. Okay, so mhos enta 10 to 10 power minus 6 and resistivity 1 to 100 mega ohms resistivity. Right, so temperature coefficients. So to increase the temperature, the conductivity will be increases and decreases the resistivity. Right, sorry. At room temperature, the semiconductor materials act as a conductors. So normal గా semiconductors ఉంటాయి కదా. So semiconductor at a room temperature it will act as a conductors. To increase the temperature, the conductivity will be increases. To decreases the resistivity and conductivity is also decreases.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Temperature coefficient not understood.
Okay. Okay, so next electrical properties. In electrical properties, we have resistance, conductance, and temperature coefficients. So at 0 degrees, the semiconductor is act as a. At 0 degrees, the semiconductor is act as a insulator. At 0 degrees, semiconductor is act as a insulator. At room temperature enta
35, 36.
బయట ఉంటుంది కదా 35 ఎండ కొడితే. సో రూమ్ టెంపరేచర్ ఇస్ 27 degrees. Okay, so at a room temperature the semiconductor materials act as a conductors, right? So if you are increasing the temperature increase చేసినాం అనుకోండి, so conductivity is increases and resistivity is decreases. So if you are increasing the temperature, conductivity increases and decreases the resistivity of a semiconductor. So it is called as a negative temperature coefficient. Negative temperature coefficient. So at 0 degrees, semiconductor materials act as insulators. At room temperature, it is act as a conductor. So if you are increasing the temperature more than the room temperature, so conductivity is also increases, and as well as if the conductivity increases, the resistivity is decreases. So what it is called? Negative temperature coefficient. For suppose మనం 0 degree లో ఉంది అనుకోండి, 0 degrees means in cool places. 0 degrees అంటే ఐస్ లేకపోతే ఎక్కడ దూరం ఉన్నప్పుడు, ఐ మీన్ ఇది స్నోలో ఉన్నప్పుడు, అప్పుడు ఏంటి, సో ఇట్ ఈస్ యాక్ట్ యాజ్ ఏ ఇన్సులేటర్. అంటే ఏమవుతుంది, సో ఎట్ 0 degrees ద సెమీ కండక్టర్ విల్ నాట్ వర్క్, సో ఇట్ ఈస్ యాక్ట్ యాజ్ ఏ ఇన్సులేటర్. ఒక రూమ్ లో పెట్టేసుకున్నాం అనుకోండి ఆ సెమీ కండక్టర్, ఇట్ ఈస్ యాక్ట్ యాజ్ ఏ కండక్టర్. So if you are increasing the temperature more than the room temperature, the conductivity increases of a semiconductor and as well as resistivity also decreases, and it is called as a negative temperature coefficient. Negative temperature coefficient. Is that clear?
Yeah, sir. Okay, sir.
So semiconductors are we have a group of elements. We have some group of elements in a chemical periodic table. Okay, so from 3 groups, group number 3, 4 and 5. So we can create the semiconductor materials. So we can form the semiconductor materials. So mostly we are taking only 4th group elements. So what are the 4th group elements? Carbon.
Sir.
What are the 4th group elements? Third group elements.
Boron.
Boron, very good. Aluminium. Boron, aluminium, gallium, indium and ఇది ఒక ఫ్లో ఉంటాయి కదా, ఇది చెప్పడానికి ఏమవుతుంది, బోరాన్, అల్యూమినియం, గాలియం, ఇండియం అండ్ థాలియం. సో దీస్ ఆర్ ద థర్డ్ గ్రూప్ ఎలిమెంట్స్. అండ్ 4th group elements, carbon, silicon, germanium, lead and fluorine. So fluorine will not consider as a semiconductor materials. Carbon, that is also a gas and it is not considered. And tin and lead, so these are the what, so only solid materials మాత్రం తీసుకోండి, only solid materials తీసుకోండి. So no need to require gases and liquids. Gases అవసరం లేదు, liquids అవసరం లేదు. Just take 2 solid materials. In this group we have 2 solid materials. Those are silicon and germanium. Okay, silicon and germanium. And the 5th group elements are nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, antimony and ఇంకొక ఎలిమెంట్ ఏంటి గర్ల్స్? 5th group elements
So bismuth.
మీకు చెప్పేది అర్థమవుతుందా అందరికి?
Yes, sir.
nitrogen, phosphorus,
So BI.
బిఐ దట్ మీన్స్
Sir bismuth.
so BA that is nothing but bismuth. Okay, so third group elements boron, aluminum, gallium, indium, thallium. Next, fourth group elements carbon, silicon, germanium, tin, lead and fluorine. So we can consider only two materials, so those are the solid materials. Solid materials are silicon and germanium. In the fifth group, so we are avoiding nitrogen because that is a gas, and phosphorus, arsenic, antimony, bismuth. So we are considering only phosphorus, arsenic, antimony and bismuth. Okay, so from these three groups, so we can create semiconductors, we can create different semiconductor materials. Okay, so before that, so we need to know about active components and passive components. So active components, that means active components.
Very easy to bond us.
So we need to know about active components and passive components. Active and passive. So already passive తెలిసే ఉంటుంది మీకు. Passive components is made up of with semiconductor materials only. So passive components are for, suppose I will tell the definition. So passive components will consume some energy, consume some electricity. So ఏం కన్స్యూమ్ చేస్తున్నాయి? Passive components is going to consume some energy. So R is nothing but what?
Resistance.
Resistor, very good. RLC. R is nothing but resistance, and L. What are the units for inductors? Inductor units ఏంటి? Capacitor units ఏంటి?
Farads.
What about resistor?
Ohms.